Good day. In today's interview, I thought I'd turn the tables and introduce Chris Taylor, the founder and director of Winning Habits, an organization dedicated to organizational and personal coaching. Hey, good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, Tony. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, look, I thought there's a lot of information out there about COVID-19, and I'm getting buried in information about advice and what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. So I thought that it might be an interesting exercise in actually talking about coaching. I think there's some confusion out there. A lot of coaches on the internet at the moment, a lot of confusion about exactly what is coaching and the benefits. So let's focus on coaching. Yeah, and I guess we could put it in the context of actually post-COVID coming out of that. But let's talk about coaching. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested, Chris. So what first attracted you to coaching?
I was just a bit crazy.
Yeah.
What attracted me? Well, initially I had a career change. Actually, go back to the COVID situation. Let's talk very briefly about transformation. We're transforming now as a world, as a nation, internationally, behaviorally, business. Like it or deny it or fight it, we're transforming now. So the opportunity is to look in the mirror for ourselves, our families, our businesses. So, well, hey, let's accept this change, ride with it, and transform ourselves and our lives. So I actually think it's a perfect time for coaching.
Yeah.
But back to your question, what first introduced me? I was frustrated in my career as an engineer, and I was looking for something different in my late 30s, early 40s. And what I knew I wanted in the future was to be around people, to work with people, because my people centricity wasn't fed through my engineering career, particularly doing technical work. And I looked at what I want. I love people. I love a sense of high performance, or being a performer in teams, be it in business. So I try to knit that together, and then I kind of saw an opportunity to work with an organization who did a similar line of work, and I thought, I was utterly green as the paddock, and I thought, well, let's explore this, and that's what I did back in 2011, 12.
Oh, interesting. So that people connection, really. That's what taken out of what you said. Yeah.
Absolutely, Tony. Sort of the people centricity, being around different individuals, how they think, how they behave, their motivations, their personalities, how they blend and lead and form teams.
Great. So I mean, following that theme, I mean, why do people seek coaching?
Well, that's a good question. Not everyone does, of course. It's a fairly small proportion of those, I believe, who reach out and who are courageous to enter the coaching arena.
Yeah.
I think for those who do, they're at probably a tipping point in their brains, minds, and lives that something needs to change, but they're maybe hooked back into their old thinking and their old lives and their old ways.
So why do you think? I mean, just picking up on your point there, why are people hesitant? I mean, if there's a change required in their lives, as you just said, why do you think people are hesitant in coming forward and seeking that sort of intervention, that support?
Intrinsically, because of themselves. They are, this is my belief, that if you're going to enter into the coaching arena, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be challenging your thinking, maybe historical thinking, how you've always done stuff or behaved or been in relationships. But a lot of people, that's scary. And I empathize with it being scary, because I've been coached twice over 12, 18 months. And I've been at the bottom of the well, and I get it. But in fact, unless you bite that bullet, the threat is there'll be no change in your life.
Yeah. I mean, so how would you best describe, I mean, for the people that are not familiar with coaching, how would you best describe the process of coaching? I mean, actually looking at your description, that's quite scary. Got to be courageous and things. I just wanted some help. So describe the process.
You help support it. They're all nice things, but sometimes it's actually bringing you to a point of change and transformation.
Yeah.
I mean, in an ideal world, we'll all walk up to our first bungee jump and go, "Hey, it's just a bungee jump. It's great."
You're right.
And you jump off and you're like smiling wistfully as you're hurtling 120 meters towards the ground. But change is sometimes challenging and confrontational.
Yeah.
Um, the process of coaching is very varied amongst different practices, philosophies, approaches.
Yeah.
From, say, if you're coached by a Tony Robbins coach, it might be different to say a
Yeah.
Wayne Habits coach. But fundamentally, it's about connection and relational start. You've got to be able to
Yeah.
have relational, communal. You've got to be able to talk to each other, and
Yeah.
you've got to build on a common base of values. And then it's really looking at a process, Tony, looking at an evolutionary process
Yeah.
of questioning, of enlightenment, and
Sure.
looking at a pathway of change. And then you execute that pathway with accountability.
So, I mean, that's interesting. I think one of the confusions that I've come across is that so isn't that mentoring? What's a fundamental? What's the mindset difference between, I mean, so if you look at that whole thing, and if you Google, as most people will do, then you come up with coaching, consulting, mentoring, and so what you've just described could be interpreted as actually we'll just have a conversation. Isn't that mentoring?
That's a great question. I frame mentoring as a practice of prior experience. If you look at,
Yeah.
say, the classical sage who's been there, done that. So that sage may offer advice. Coaches don't offer advice. They may offer sort of wisdom from prior learnings. Coaches
Sure.
shouldn't really do that, but sometimes we do because it's
Right.
hard to avoid. With accountability in the profession and the practice of coaching and mentoring, there's a distinction there.
Yeah.
So I'd say coaching is more, and obviously you've got the subject matter expertise, subject matter idiot sort of definition of
Sure.
the two. So coaching for me, far more asking questions, listening, and enabling the coachee to connect dots in their own brains and minds as to what's valuable for them to do, as
Right.
opposed to a mentor who may see that person maybe an hour a month or an hour every 2 months. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I would see some of the key differences, Tony.
Yeah, it is confusing. It can be confusing because if you look at the most famous coach probably in New Zealand, coach of the All Blacks, I can imagine that actually is a subject matter expert. He's going to be saying, well, what you should be doing is that. So I think that's where some of the confusion comes from. I may be wrong. It's about, well, as a coach, they've got a high-profile coach, so that's coaching. So he's an expert, but he's telling people what to do or what his expectations are, which is different from what you've described.
Well, that's a really important distinction, Tony, around being instructional.
Yeah.
So coaches we should never be instructional. A
Right.
rugby coach could be different in sense of
Yeah.
tactics and leadership, but you and I coaching, we cross the line when we're instructional, when we're tasking clients, and that's a good point you raise about
Yeah.
misconceptions of coaching. About I don't want to be told what to do. So
Yeah.
what you're facilitating is more of an empowering force within the coach's brain for them to tell them what to do, what they should be doing.
Sure.
Of course, often they're not doing it for other reasons, other psychological reasons.
Yeah.
So we're not
Yeah.
instructing.
Yeah. So what happens if a coach or a coachee says, "Well, I'm not quite sure what to do. How what would you recommend?" I mean, so that's the easy way, I should imagine, of crossing that divide into instruction. So because of your expertise and experience, you've got life knowledge, and someone's thirsting for it. So there's a and isn't that a bit of a trap for a coach?
Totally get it. And it's a trap we've all fallen into. And if there's a coach watching this who hasn't done that, I don't believe you, because it's very, very tempting. It's a bit like the apple.
Right.
The apple is across the table. You just need to reach over and grab it.
Yeah.
but we need to
Okay.
hang on to the belief that it's more powerful and enlivening for that person to get to their own sense of knowledge or conclusion. And our skill
Yeah.
set is to ask the right questions.
Yes. Yes.
It's a bit like pinball. Remember old pinball? So the ball's coming up the pinball machine and it's being sort of knurled and nudged and it bounces off a spring. And we are kind of like the pinball machine of questioning in getting that stainless steel ball, 3.5 feet
Yeah.
down into the trap.
Yeah.
I've never used that metaphor before. I've just thought of that, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, but it does suggest that you're quite old because I don't know what a pinball machine is. Yeah, just, just expanding on. So taking all of what you've said into consideration, what do you think that coach brings to that relationship then? I mean, I think you've covered it, but can you synthesize that down into a
well,
simple statement?
what does a good coach bring to the coachee?
Yeah.
I think a new world. A good coach uses their skill set and their relational um, ability to ask great questions, open up a whole new world of possibilities, and to
Right.
open up the coachee to do things they never thought they could do, to expand their resources and their thinking, to inspire them to, disciplined action, to
Yeah.
do amazing stuff, whatever that is,
Yeah.
business, leadership, relationships. Going
Okay.
back to the prior question, Tony, briefly, what do you recommend? I would go back to that coachee with a couple of questions.
Sure.
What do you think? What excites you? What would you
Yeah.
recommend yourself if you're standing in the mirror at night?
Yeah.
So I would always try and resist the advisory, even though it is temptation, and
Yeah.
just bounce back with a question. And it does take time and practice to get that questioning mentality.
I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So taking again all of that into consideration because I think you're great answers to the questions. What are the three essential skills that people should look for in a coach? So if they sense that they need some help, some support, some guidance, and they're looking around, as I said before in my opening gambit, there's a lot of people out there, and in particular, New Zealand is a small place, and there are a lot of people out there vying for business, particularly now, giving advice whether you want it or not. So what should people be looking for if they're seeking a coach?
that's another great question. I think a sense of intuition with the individual. You've got to have a sense of connection, and you've either got it or you haven't. It's there or it isn't.
Yeah,
There's no way any relationship can be forced. I
yeah,
think that's number one. I think you need to look a little bit of the long tail of existence. So if you, so we've been around sort of 8 years plus. So as an organization and myself, we've had some big dips and
sure.
come through. I would look at maybe the longevity. If
Yeah,
someone's been around maybe a year, 18 months, couple of years, I would potentially look at a sense of longevity,
yeah,
maybe some authenticity and credibility. Check their LinkedIn profile, etc.
yeah.
There's a
I think that's good information because it's a bit like consulting. A huge percentage of consultants, and it probably is the case, and advice if that's not the case, is actually they've had a great career, they finished, they've gone into retirement or semi-retirement. What can I do? Well, I can become a consultant. So there's probably a whole bunch of people out there that actually have had good careers and are not ready to go into the green field,
Yeah,
but then become coaches,
yeah.
or market themselves as coaches.
I think Tony as well. Fit finding is crucial up front, and I'm long on the tooth now to probably be honest with those around me if I feel we won't be a fit, and that's okay.
Yeah,
And I would do that for the best decision for both of us.
sure.
But yeah, I'd
Yeah,
say yeah, a bit of longevity and a sense of connection is very, very important. And
yeah,
and I would say when we start coaching, we don't really know because we don't
yeah,
know we don't know what the future holds, and we just
yes,
need to make a start.
yes,
Um, obviously operate within the confines and the confidentialities and the good
Sure.
practices of the profession.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, let's switch to the conversation to the coachee. What's you think the key mindset is that's a requirement for the coachee? I mean, where have they got to be? So the coach, we know you just described the skills that the coach brings to that relationship. What's the mindset, in order to have that fertile ground of improvement? What should the coachee's mindset be?
I think Tony is just openness. It's old Einstein says the mind is an umbrella, best works open. You have to have that sense of openness to new thinking and learning. You need to have a sense of vulnerability to potentially let go of how you've been thinking and behaving, perhaps for the whole of your life. If you're a middle-aged screw up, you might have to look at how things have unfolded within your life. What have you said? Who have you attracted? Who have you
Sure.
uh, so I think a sense of openness and vulnerability, a sense of curiosity, I think that's a massive point in the
Yeah.
coaching profession. It's being just a little bit curious to think, oh, well, hey, Chris,
Mm.
maybe I do upset the team from time to time, or just being open and curious to self-learning and development. One thing I would say, Tony, is that self-awareness is a never-ending continuum. We
Mm.
always build our sense of awareness as to how we behave with people, how they respond or react to us, whether they're attracted or repelled. And I find that a fascinating facet of this miracle of human existence, that we can always learn about ourselves. Even as a coach with 8, 9 years in the game, I can
Sure.
always learn about what I'm doing right, what can be improved upon.
Mm.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
that's that.
say there's
Yeah, I would concur with that. I would concur with that. I mean, not even just in coaching. If you don't learn something new every day, and I don't mean studying a course. I mean, if you don't learn something about yourself or about the world, about some sort of relationship, then it says pretty much that you've got a closed mind. Which
yeah.
comes on to one of the final questions. So, can anyone be coached?
That's a really good question as well. Opportunistically and egalitarian wise, I'd like to say yes, of course they can. But unfortunately, no, I don't think everyone is coachable. And I think our opportunity with an individual, with a team, is to determine fairly readily whether they
Yeah,
have those qualities to be coached and coachable. Um, and I think
yeah,
coaches, we need to get to that conclusion relatively quickly.
yeah. I wonder why. I mean, give me an example of someone, you've had that initial meeting, you think you've got a rapport there, which is, I think, just reflecting back on your answers.
I know
Um,
someone in my
yeah,
head right now, Tony, who's not coachable.
right,
Um, I like the guy. I connect with him, but he's not coachable
right.
because he's not prepared to be open and vulnerable, Tony.
Oh, okay, right.
And
So,
and there's a sense of mana and control within the
right,
psychology of this individual who will
yeah,
prevent a coach coming into their space of thinking.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, I can think of
But
more over the years that you just have
yeah,
to conclude that it's not going to work for us.
yeah. I guess that's true. So I guess that's an element of courage.
Oh,
And exposing yourself. So I guess you become vulnerable, maybe. Is that a good reflection of what you're thinking?
I think with this person, Tony, some of the things they said were so far off the mark about coaching. It was I,
Right.
I thought we were talking different languages. Most of it will come down to fear of self, I would say. I
Yeah.
believe that it'll be fear of themselves, not of me or you or Tony Robbins or whoever's coaching out in the world. It's the prospect of looking in that mirror and seeing what you see and the whole truth of that existence. And I think people hold on to their pain sometimes. And hey, if you want to hold on
Yeah.
to your pain, hold on to it. there's no one to say in this world why you should or you shouldn't release that pain or open up your
Yeah.
mind to relieving that pain. Some people are
Yeah.
so anchored in their habits and their thinking and their dysfunction, perhaps, that's almost their character and persona, and they've built
Mm.
around that. So,
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
no, not everyone's coachable, and
no. Okay.
that's how it is.
Yeah, as you said, it should be, but I can understand. I can understand. So, why are I mean, I know we've discussed it in the past about um, you know, you know, a coachee and a coach finding that connection. But why are some people hesitant um, in you know, exploring or seeking a coach or having sought a coach? Why are they hesitant in actually committing to the process, whether that's an individual or a CEO or business owner? What do you think
Well, I
people
can't
hold?
I can't speak for other people, but more
Okay, in your experience.
Well, more likely not. It's back to that fear of change. It's
Yeah,
that sense of you're going to have someone who's going to ask you some tough questions. You
yeah,
might not have been asked those questions before. They're going to support you and empathize and share stories, and we can build an amazing trusted relationship. I mean, I've got a client at the moment who's amazing. He's amazing. He's flying.
right.
I'm also going to give him a get out of jail free card in the next month because I think he's arrived. We've kind of utterly uh, set out to deliver the change that we planned and set at the
Yeah,
start. So he's an ideal client. He's hungry. He's doing more.
yeah,
He's punctual. He's zestful. He's
sure.
enthusiastic. They're the type of clients that most coaches want to attract. Um,
Yeah,
but it goes back to I think the vulnerability piece is very poignant, Tony. Uh,
yeah,
and unless we can be vulnerable with your wife, your husband, your children, your business partner, this life can be a very lonely place. And
sure.
so, yeah, some coaches like that sense of confidentiality to have someone that may not say types of things to
Oh,
other people ever, and that for them that's a plus.
yeah.
Mm.
I mean that situation you just described sounds really good, really positive. It's good when the coach and coachee spark off one another because there's a lot of energy there.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I've heard in the past, a number of years ago, you know, someone would say, "Oh yes, I have a coach. I'm being coached," and it's almost like a perpetual. So, in your experience, actually, if you have that relationship with a coachee, and you've set some goals, or the coachee set what was the expectations are. I mean, is this a lifelong relationship, or what does that look like? If someone's looking at this and thinking, yeah, maybe I'll contact Chris. What what's that engagement? Is it a lifelong thing or
Again,
project?
it's a great topic to talk about in coaching because it's a little bit of how long is a piece of string and what's the framing and the purpose of the relationship? Is it business? Is it profit? Is it leadership? Is it relational? What's the sense of it? If you look at transformative coaching, if you look at, say, a Tony Robbins event, for example, you're doing it in the room, you're there.
Mm,
So that's one end of the coaching space where it's almost instant and transformational. It might be 2 or 3 sessions. And then I hear stories of other coaches having clients for years. And
yeah,
we think about Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn, 40 years.
yeah,
So there's no right or wrong.
sure,
There's no finite definition.
yeah,
I think most, if you're authentic, which if you're authentic as a coach, you want your coachee to arrive and be self-sustaining and be self-powered into their
yeah,
life with the new change and skills that they have through the coaching process. Um, because you can be deleterious into social and we can fall into that trap of just having a sort of a buddying
sure.
relationship, which isn't
Get together.
coaching.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great topic to raise,
Mm,
Tony. Uh,
mm,
in my experience, the average sort of longevity of a good client relationship can be anything between 6 and 18 months.
Right.
But I know someone in town here in Christchurch who's had clients for 8 to 10 years, and that's great.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
great. There's no, I don't think there's a right or wrong.
No.
And I think it
Okay.
depends on the character, perhaps, of the coach, in a sense of their sense of action and dynamism, or
Mm.
what makes their makeup for
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
It's a great.
I've seen in my own experience, one of the things that cuts across that is this whole thing about cost. Am I getting value for money? And the value is always, it's not real value, it's actually, am I getting the benefits of the money that I'm paying? And therefore, actually 3 months in, we've done that. And it's not necessarily cut short because of actually whether the coach has reached his aspirations or his goals. It's really because, well, they've run out of budget. Um, is that a common experience coaches have?
Bit of a reality today with Mr. COVID, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mr. or Mrs. COVID. I think there's a mindset towards coaching of those who look below the ledger. They're looking below the ledger on the balance sheet, if you like, and they're looking at the financial side. But very often we cannot apportion a financial framing to the experience of change and future. And what is the value of that experiential change, future growth? I mean, if you become a more effective and more transformative leader in a corporate organization, is that 10 grand? 10 million. I mean,
Yeah.
so I hear you, and it's rational and logic. I think my experience is that if you've got someone coming in who's looking below the ledger, they generally doesn't end up in a great result in a
Yeah.
relationship sense, because
Yeah.
they're looking at the bottom line, they're looking at money. And when you look
Yeah.
at financials, which is a sort of a biopsy framing in your brain, you might limit yourself to bungee jump off and to experiment and be brave and courageous to be a new persona of a leader. I hear you. It's sensible. It's
Yeah.
rational. You and I trained as engineers. We get it. However, if you're abundant and opportunistic, you're going to say, "Yeah, let's do this." But sure, you got to frame you got to frame the outro for this
Yeah.
relation. We've got to frame, how do we know we're done? And then if we're done, there might
Yeah.
be something else creeps up and we work on. If not, you
But,
shake hands and say, "Hey, it's been great working with you, Tony."
yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Uh,
Yes, it's complicated business. Yeah. So, Chris, if hopefully someone's and been inspired by this really good interview, if they want to get in touch with you to take this subject further with you, and what's the best way that they can do that?
sure. Yeah. winninghabits.co.nz, Tony. I actually I'm a talker, as you might have gathered from this interview. So you or can call me 021 708 751. Operating out of Christchurch, New Zealand. So yeah, if you're inspired for coaching, if you just want to explore the whole idea of coaching,
Oh,
supplementary to this interview, do get in touch. It'd be great to hear from you.
yeah, they do that. Yeah, thanks very much for your time, Chris. I know you're a busy guy. So it's been great talking to you. Thanks very much. I hope people have enjoyed the interview. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tony. Take care.
Yeah. Cheers, Chris.
See you soon. Bye.